I had been on birth control for more years than I had not been on birth control. And at no point did anyone step in and say, hey, how might this be affecting your body on a long-term basis? Hello everyone, my name is Linda and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so happy to have you joining me, especially on this video that I feel is so deeply personal. As you would know from the title, this video is me talking about my experience coming off of birth control. So let's first start off with a quick disclaimer. I just want to say that regardless of where you are on your journey of being on birth control or not being on birth control, thinking about going on birth control, thinking about going back on birth control, I think it's so important that when we consider our fertility and our health, that we always make the decisions that are best for us. So this is not a medical video. I am only allowed to speak on my own behalf, and none of this should be taken as recommendations for what you should do for yourself until you've really looked inwards, decided for yourself, and talked to a medical professional who can help you make the best decision for you. And on that same topic of birth control, while there are many things in the history of birth control that I definitely do not support and do not believe in, I do definitely see the value that birth control has provided for us as women going back through generations of being able to ourselves take control of our ability to bear children. And by being able to, say, avoid having children for a certain period of time has allowed women in society to be able to advance and go to school and get an education by being able to avoid getting pregnant and the stereotypical having to stay home with kids. So by no means am I against birth control, but this is just my story and my experience of what it's been like coming off birth control after being on it for so long, why I made the decisions, and the changes I've noticed since. So let's start first off with some backstory. I was about 15 or 16 when I first got put on birth control. Looking back on this experience, I don't recall there ever being any blood work or medical examination other than do you smoke as a ground point to be put on birth control. Obviously it's years and years and years ago now, but there were no barrier to access. Now, I say that fully understanding that the barrier to getting contraceptive care for a lot of people in a lot of areas of the world is very difficult. And I want to honor and respect that in the fact that I am grateful that I didn't have to jump through hoops to get it physically, like to actually obtain it was really easy. And I feel for those where that isn't as easy. I see you and I hear you. But in my particular case, I feel like it was almost too easy to get in the fact that they at no point really did any medical evaluation to make sure that what they were giving me was good and healthy for me, or to just make sure that I was functioning, like fertility wise, menstrual cycle wise, in a healthy way before they put me on the medication. I definitely just find that there's a lack of education on even how it works. I remember Googling that, but how it works, and lack of discussion around what the long-term effects might be or what the long-term expectations might be of when you come off. Needless to say, I went onto the hormonal birth control, also known as the pill, and I stayed on the same brand for approximately 16 years. When it comes to female reproduction and how our bodies work, as a just general rule, I believe that there is a huge lack of education on how our bodies actually work and what exactly our bodies are doing throughout our monthly cycle, what's normal, what's not. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, because when I came off the pill, I read a book, and the book was so good. I had gotten it from the library on an ebook. It was so good that I ordered it, and this sucker, which Jason calls my Uterus Encyclopedia, I will talk a little bit about later in this video. I want to share with you some of the reasons that I decided at the beginning of 2022 that I was going to come off birth control. So I've waited to record this video for 9 months because I wanted to make sure that I allowed enough time to be able to share as much of my experience as possible. The number one reason that I chose to come off birth control and seek a more natural option of trying to avoid getting pregnant was the following. I was having discussions with a lot of the women in my life of childbearing ages who were struggling really hard to get pregnant. In my circle of influence, I was talking to a lot of women who had been trying to get pregnant for a year, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Women who were undergoing IVF in order to hopefully have a baby. Women who were struggling with secondary infertility. And I just thought to myself, if having children is so important to me and something that I look forward to, what can I do to make sure that I am mitigating the risk on my end as much as I can? And the first thing that came to light was I've been on hormonal birth control for 16 years. What has this done long term to my body? Does my body even know how to cycle on its own? Like, it's literally been years since it's done it. There had to be a better way than taking a synthetic pill to avoid getting pregnant and to help mitigate those risks. I sat down with my doctor in December-ish. I said, I've been on birth control for 16 years. I do not need a refill. What can I expect? And what she said to me, and she is a really great doctor. I think it's just the lack of education out there, or the fact that all women are so very different. So my experience could be totally different from your own. But she said, if in 6 months of trying you are not pregnant, come and see me. We will then do some blood work and put you on a list for infertility treatment. And that usually takes 6 months. So then 6 months later, we can then get you in for infertility treatment, because that was the assumption if you were struggling to get pregnant. And that was it. I asked her, what can I expect? What kind of things should I notice? How will I know if something's wrong? And there was just nothing, because as women, all of our bodies are so different and we all function in different ways, and our hormones, will revert back to what they were before we started birth control. Now, that was 16 years ago. I don't remember. Heck, I didn't know how my body worked back then, so guess what? I didn't know how my body worked now. Which is maybe a little embarrassing as a woman at 32, but that is the fact for a lot of women. So if that's you, know that you are not alone. So let's start by chatting about some of the key things I noticed that changed when I came off hormonal birth control. Some of these changes I noticed almost right away, and some of these have taken the whole 9 months for them to become very noticeable and more consistent to what I can now call normal. First things first, as it relates to my period. since coming off hormonal birth control, my period is substantially lighter. I would say it was almost non-existent when I first stopped the pill, and from the research I've been able to do, oftentimes the pill decreases the quality of the uterine liner. So I assume that coming off birth control, my body just had to relearn how to produce a healthy uterine lining, and it didn't know how, so it took some time to figure its stuff out. On the same topic of my period, I noticed that the cramping that I would typically get right before the menstrual stage of my cycle, while they used to be pretty minor, they completely disappeared. However, in saying that, I did notice that I would get what I then learned to be ovulation cramping right around the time of ovulation. Now, while my period cramps were never crazy bad, these new ovulation cramps were something else. Like, I would be sitting on the couch with a heat pad, and there was nothing you could do that would get me to do anything. So it has been a journey to learn to navigate those times of the month now. The next biggest thing, TMI, feel free to fast forward 30 seconds. If the topic of all the fluids that our body produces is too much for you, giving you grace. But when you're on hormonal birth control, the production of cervical mucus, which is essentially what is designed to help a woman guide the sperm to the egg when trying to have a baby, something that's vital to the reproductive process and how things work. While on hormonal birth control, this fluid is all but stopped for most women. And it's something that essentially the quality is drastically decreased in order to help prevent pregnancy. It's one of the many different things that is changed with the hormones. So, coming off hormonal birth control, my body restarted this process and this step in terms of my reproduction, and it was something that was just very new and surprising and a little bit shocking. So I'm glad I'd done some research in what Jason calls my handy dandy Uterus Encyclopedia, and was able to learn what it meant and how to read those signs to figure out my fertile window, which I will talk a little bit more at the end when I talk about FEM. A few other things that I noticed. First off, when it came to my hair and my nails are now so much stronger. I don't know what the correlation is, what hormone change would be responsible for that, but I used to have really weak, brittle nails. I could never really grow my nails out very long or very strong, but I have no problems growing out my nails now. They are so strong and so healthy, and it is absolutely wonderful, and I'm super grateful. In terms of my hair, I just find my hair a little bit thicker, not crazy much, but I definitely find that it grows faster. That's kind of an observation that I've noticed. On that same note, as we, both as it relates to my hair, but also my skin, I have noticed a change in my skin in terms of the acne that I get. Now I'm noticing more hormonal acne, so I'll get it like at my nose, still on my forehead, and a little bit on my chin, as what I can assume is just a increase in sebum production. I say that because I also noticed that my hair gets a little bit oilier faster, so I've had to, really learn, and I'm still learning to navigate that and using slightly different products to find what is now going to work for my skin. When it comes to the mental side of things, I think some of the biggest things that I have noticed, and as a whole, I notice I have more energy. I also feel like I have more motivation. I have more like very driven days, which has been really nice. I don't feel as sluggish or foggy as I used to. So that's been a really, really great improvement in just how my brain works and how quick it operates. And I would say is a really, really big win. And just overall, I feel healthier, more vibrant, more happy. I can say happy. On that same note though, I definitely noticed that I feel like emotion-wise, I feel more deeply. I can say that when I'm happy, I'm happier. When I'm sad, I'm maybe sadder. So definitely feeling emotions a little more strongly. So that is where a lot of my personal development comes in terms of just reflecting on my emotions, where they're coming from, why I'm feeling them, and knowing that emotions are just a sign and being able to move past that a lot quicker. But definitely having to work a lot more on my mental health when I'm feeling things more deeply. So those are some of the biggest changes that I have noticed throughout my journey of coming off birth control over the last 9 months. I trust that I will still continue to notice new changes as I progress further of not being on birth control, but those are yet to be seen. So now, obviously being on birth control has its benefits. The biggest one being that you don't have to really worry about the whole getting pregnant thing. As Jason and I are at this very particular moment trying to avoid getting pregnant, we have just a few more milestones we need to hit or want to hit before that time comes. But I did a lot of research on different types of preventing pregnancy to try and find the one that would work absolute best for me. I had sat down with a really great friend of mine and I asked her, how have you been avoiding getting pregnant up until this point, or up until you decide to have your child? And she said that she started using a method called FAM, which is the Fertility Awareness Method. Essentially, as the name says, it's becoming aware of your fertility signs in order to either conceive or avoid pregnancy. So I started to do some research. As I mentioned, I found a book on the public library and I downloaded an ebook version of it. I learned so much about how my body works in a week of reading this book than I had learned in my entire life of being a woman. It was a huge eye-opener in the lack of education that is available, in the lack of knowledge being passed on. And I have vowed that if I have daughters, these are things that I am going to teach them, because I felt like I had been so naive to something that I was literally living in. So I love the book so much. I ordered it. This book, called Taking Charge of Your Fertility, basically walks you through one of the variances of fertility awareness method of birth control and conception. The book is largely based on knowing when your fertile window is so you can get pregnant, but also does feature a portion on natural birth control. The fertility awareness method is not for everyone, and it does come with a learning curve. If you do choose to learn a version of the FEM birth control method, I highly recommend that you either find a good book, do a lot of research, and start tracking for several months before you choose to go unprotected, or to seek out someone who teaches a version of the fertility awareness method so you can make sure that you have a coach in your corner to help you prevent if that's what you're trying to do. But FAM basically works off of, and the Taking Charge of Your Fertility, which is the one I am doing specifically, it charts on 3, but really 2 main criteria to determine your fertile window. First is cervical mucus, so knowing how the cervical mucus of our body changes throughout the course of our month and what it means and what it indicates in terms of our fertility, and your basal body temperature. Your basal body temperature is basically your body's resting temp, and that is something that I track every single morning right when I wake up. And essentially, when we ovulate, it creates a spike in our resting temperature, which is a typical indicator of ovulation. The other metric that this method of FEM talks about is cervical position. This is one that they say it is optional, as for many women it's very hard to track, but those would be the three main tracking methods in this book for FEM. One of the biggest things that I was most excited for in adopting this method of avoiding pregnancy was that through this journey, I've learned so much about how my body works. I now feel very confident in how my body's working. I feel very confident in my fertility is really powerful because it gives me a lot of peace of mind that when we do choose to have children, that I have the tools that I need to maximize the efficiency and chances of actually getting pregnant. To close this out, I just want to reiterate that every single woman is so different. And I understand that if you're watching this, your journey might be so very different, and that there is so much power in being able to learn how your body works and to be able to be aware of the red flags when they do come up. Our menstrual cycle is such a strong indicator of our health, and knowing how it works and knowing when things are out of sync is extremely valuable. So whether you be on this journey of coming off birth control, you're thinking about doing it, you've already done it, and you're here to just learn someone else's experience, I'm grateful to have you. I would love for you to go down in the comments, share with me your experience, what you're going through, what you've learned, and to stay in touch. I'm wishing us all the super best on this journey. I'm glad that you guys joined me on this deeply personal video. I want to say I would have filmed this one months ago, but was maybe a little bit too shy or nervous to share this stuff. But if it can help even one woman feel more comfortable transitioning off of hormonal birth control, then I'm glad to be the one to help. I can't wait to have you guys join me in a future video. I'll see you next time. Bye.